Hello and welcome. I'm Jenny Day, and this is the backstory. The city of San Diego has approved a new e-bike safety ordinance that bans kids under 12 from riding Class 1 and Class 2 electronic bikes. Over the last some years, e-bikes have transformed youth culture across San Diego County, but as their popularity has grown, so have concerns about safety. Rady Children's Hospital, for example, reported 262 traumatic e-bike injuries in 2025, nearly double the number reported the year before. Young e-bike riders are also 4 times more likely to suffer extremity injuries than riders on regular bicycles. Several cities in San Diego County have already passed similar bans to try to improve safety, but some say these bans have limitations. One issue that continues to fuel debate, the difference between an e-bike and an electric motorcycle. So today we do want to welcome San Diego City Councilmember Raul Campillo. He oversees District 7, which includes the north central and northeastern parts of San Diego, Allied Gardens, Mission Valley, San Carlos, Tierra Santa, a handful of others. So we're going to break down what this new ordinance means for San Diego and the potential consequences for kids and parents. So Raul Campillo, thank you again for being here. You grew up in this area, local, father of 2, politics, law, education, the whole background. So, just tell me where things are at, how you feel that this passed and why it's been so important to you.
Well, it's important to me because I have 2 young kids who in a few years are going to want to ride e-bikes.
Right.
Because let's be fair, e-bikes are fun.
Right.
They're a good way to get around.
Totally.
But like any new tool, they come with risks. And typically, like a lot of other things, people use them recklessly the first few times they use them. That's why this whole program is starting with education. The same way I would treat my children, we're trying to treat 11-year-olds and younger in San Diego. Start with education.
Right.
So if someone breaks this rule, they're going to be able to get the ticket wiped away by taking a free CHP certified online course.
Okay.
So a lot of people are worried about the punishment. It's not about punishment, it's about educating them. In the first 90 days, now that it's passed, first 30 days is all about education. The mayor, me, other council members, we're going to have advertisements, we're going to have social media ads, things like that, educating people on these new rules and how to ride them responsibly.
Right.
The next 60 days, police officers, if they see someone who they think is breaking this rule, can't hand out a ticket. They have to first give a warning, educate, have people understand this new rule is in place, and then the stick part of this ordinance kicks in. And it's a $25 ticket. It's not something that's draconian. It's just designed to make sure people take it seriously and understand they need to follow this law for their own safety and for young people's safety. And as we've seen on the streets, you don't usually see one person riding an e-bike recklessly. You see packs of people riding e-bikes irresponsibly. And that's the kind of way this behavior works. So we're going to be education first, just like I would with my 2-year-old son and my 5-month-old daughter, right? You got to start with education first.
Because, these kids, they're young, and again, they got to have a way to get around. Independence, it helps mom and dad, but they are expected to know the rules of the road at a young age.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And I think the big thing that we've seen here that's spurred us along is the number of doctors, hospitals, the hospital association has come to us and said, we've seen a several 100% spike in not just scraped knees and scraped elbows. We're talking traumatic brain injury, broken legs, extremities. The number of traumatic injuries over the past several years is what is so alarming. As little as a few years ago, we saw 3 people go into Rady Children's Hospital a year with e-bike injuries. Now it's several hundred a year. And we're talking about hospitalizations too. So what we really want to do is make sure young people understand that this is risky. They have to work with it responsibly. And we know that education program is going to teach them and their parents to take this responsibly. That's what is really going on here. And then the other side of this is I've heard from a lot of constituents who are just walking down the sidewalk, walking around the park, and they get grazed or even hit by people on e-bikes. That is the other aspect of this too. There's innocent bystanders who are getting hit by people riding e-bikes. So that's the public safety aspect of this can't be overstated.
We're talking 20 miles per hour, or what else? You've done a lot of research on this.
Well, we're not talking about just 20 miles an hour, because if you're on a regular bike, you can get up to 20 miles an hour, but you have to pedal, you have to work for it. And if you take your foot off the pedal, you start to slow down. On these e-bikes, you can go from 0 to 20 in an instant. If it's a Class 1 e-bike, that's where you use the pedals to help you have that engine assist to get up to 20 very fast. Class 2 has a throttle where you turn it, you don't even have to pedal, and you're off like a motorcycle, right? And so a Class 3 is essentially goes up to 28 miles an hour. That one is technically any motorcycle. That's already illegal for people to ride without a license. And so a lot of people have said, like, why aren't you focusing on those more dangerous ones? It's like, well, it's actually the younger kids who are learning really bad habits. Those are the ones we want to focus on right now. And then the second aspect of this is the state of California actually capped what type of regulation we can have. So Assemblymember Tasha Burner from the Encinitas area, she had a really robust bill because of different lawmakers in Sacramento saying we don't want to hand out tickets to kids. They had to compromise it down. So we have this pilot program that cities in San Diego County can do. And now we've picked this up in the city of San Diego. But you have leaders all over the county. Councilmember Mike Nzunza in Chula Vista started it off. I think that was the first one in all of our county. And now we have city of San Diego. We are putting in place these reasonable restrictions. I suspect the restrictions at the state level are going to actually increase over the next several years because lawmakers are taking this more and more seriously. But San Diego's been the leader on this in the state.
Yeah. So speaking of injuries, I do want us to hear from a San Diego police officer who is actually one of the first to investigate a serious injury collision involving a child on an e-motorcycle. Let's listen.
I actually investigated the first serious injury traffic collision involving a 14-year-old child on an electric motorcycle. And it was actually unreported at first because the people were unaware that the child was actually on a motorcycle. They were just starting to gain in popularity. And I actually was asked to go to the hospital to work this crash backwards and figure out what happened. And I just remember when I walked into the hospital and I saw the child in the ICU, unconscious on a ventilator, in just horrible shape. And I was told he probably wasn't going to survive, right? And just the absolute devastation on the parents' faces. And I knew at this time that certain things were illegal. And I asked the parent, I said, was he on this type of motorcycle? And he said, yes. And my heart sank because I just knew that this was not a bicycle collision anymore at this point. I was looking at a 14-year-old boy who was wearing a bicycle helmet when he crashed his motorcycle. And I said, never again. I said, I never want another parent to have to go through what these parents are going through.
Again, the whole goal here is safety. So, Raul, what is the response from parents, and what are you hearing about the ordinance?
I've had parents come up to me walking around town saying, I saw your e-bike proposal and we need that and we need more, because they're scared for their kids. And it's dangerous simply walking to school sometimes. We've seen many young kids get hit in my district, unfortunately, crossing the street, walking to middle school. Parents are not feeling like getting to school and getting around is safe right now. They want these reasonable regulations. These are reasonable things. That's what I keep pointing out. And ultimately, whether it's a little kid like my wife's and myself having two children that are very little, or you're even a high schooler, or this 14-year-old kid who was on a ventilator, they deserve a system that works to protect them. That's what they deserve. The kids deserve this.
Yeah, an important part of the city council. So much more to come. Keep it here. Welcome back. Jenny Day here, joined by Councilmember Raul Campillo. We are talking about e-bikes. 8 cities in San Diego County have drafted or made bans on certain ages for electronic bikes. And so now the city of San Diego is following suit. Councilmember, thank you again for being here. Talk to me about why this was the time for San Diego. We actually were not the first in the county to do so.
Right. Well, we have seen a lot more of the health data coming out of hospitals. And the real turning point was the Rady Children's Hospital that reflected how many traumatic injuries, the several 100% spike, and the level of trauma we were seeing. My office had already been working on putting this proposal into action. And, you got to go through a first committee reading. You got to go to the city attorney's office for the drafting. It takes some time to get these rules in place appropriately. Working with the police department on how to enforce, how to get the message out through the school districts as well. It takes time to get this done, right? And the city of San Diego has 1.4 million people and 50 planning areas. It takes a while to get this in place. But seeing that data from Rady Children's Hospital really put it on the front page of the paper to understand this is a public health crisis. And then you see last month, the County of San Diego puts out a public health warning about e-bikes because they realized just how many people were using them, how many people were buying them for their kids. You can buy one very easily now. And there's a lot of people don't know what they're buying. They are buying e-motorcycles when they think they're getting an e-bike, or they think they're getting a regular bike when they get an e-bike. It's confusing. I will say that I'm excited that legislators from San Diego up in Sacramento are trying to push for more rules. Senator Catherine Blakespear has one about consumer protections and making sure that the bikes are labeled appropriately so parents can buy the right bike for their child. It's very important that we pass that at the state level. But just seeing the numbers of kids with traumatic injuries and hospitalizations. I mean, how many of us ever had a friend who on a normal pedal bike, had to go to the hospital for something like hitting the asphalt? That just wasn't a thing that happened. Now it happens every single day in the city. And the effect it's having on first responders who show up to these accidents, it's an overall public health problem. And so getting this in place right now is a very first good step.
Yeah. So helmets. I'll say it 1,000 times, but let's talk about the other side, because I'm very respectful of parents who are like, I need my kid to be able to ride their bike, as a form of transportation, or bicycle advocates. This is a healthy. Kids should be on bikes. What is the backlash maybe that you've heard?
Well, I hear from people arguing that these restrictions shouldn't be put in place because e-bikes are a good alternative for transportation.
Sure.
And what I respond with is 100% they're good, but they have to be used responsibly. Not to mention, because the state put a cap of the age we're allowed to limit, which is 11 and under, a 12-year-old is kind of where middle school is, right? So kids going to middle school and high school, they're still able to use these. But elementary school students who are young, vulnerable, not fully coordinated, we're trying to protect the kids who are most at risk to injury with these. And so when we have the authority to help a group of young people like that, why wouldn't we use it? I advocate for bike safety, pedestrian safety, people driving in cars safety, designing the roads better. We need more money in the city for better infrastructure, but we really, really need to understand who's vulnerable and protect that vulnerable group of people.
Let's lay out the ordinance once again. What does it do? What did the city council just pass?
Okay, so if you're 11 years old or younger, you are prohibited from riding a Class 1 and Class 2 e-bike. Class 1 means pedal assist up to 20 miles an hour. Class 2 means throttle assist up to 20 miles an hour. We also ban anybody from riding on an e-bike when there's 2 people for 1 seat. It has to be designed for 2 seats for 2 people. Doesn't matter what age you are. And then we reinforce things like the helmet law. We enforced other existing laws as well. And then, of course, the ticket only comes into place 90 days after it becomes law. First 30 days, public health campaign, public message campaign. The next 60 days is all about warnings. And then after that, it's a $25 ticket. And that's essentially the rough outline of it.
What if an 11-year-old is caught? Still 25, or what happens with under 11?
If it's an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old, $25 ticket. The key here is that we're not trying to be overly punitive, but there has to be something at the end of the road that holds a person accountable. And I don't suspect an 11-year-old is going to have $25 to pay their ticket. Their parents probably going to have to pay it.
How will you measure success? What's the city looking for?
Well, we're going to collect all the data. The state law requires that we collect all the data from all the stops and all the tickets we make, and then report that back up to the state level so we can see that it's a good program. Success is going to be lots of young people who are 12, 13, 14, riding more responsibly, learning at ages 8, 9, 10, 11, this is something dangerous. You should respect it and learn how to use it appropriately, learn the rules of the road. And ultimately, what I really hope comes through, and I've heard this from a lot of seniors, they see packs of young kids riding it around. One of those kids saying, this is against the rules, this is against the law, and this is dangerous. And that being something that changes the culture around teenagers riding e-bikes recklessly. I want to see that culture change through the education program. And then last but not least, we want to see the injuries decrease. Absolutely. That is the ultimate goal. We don't want any parents to have to, show up at an ER with their kid with a significant traumatic brain injury. That's the worst case, or worse, even death. Like, we don't want that at all. Yeah. And so, some people who think this isn't a great idea, I'd ask them to look in the eyes of the families who've suffered these injuries and say, I think this is a reasonable first step.
Okay, well, we will be right back to talk more about how laws are continuing to get stricter and what it means for kids and parents, especially now on e-motorcycles. Keep it here with more from Councilmember Raul Campillo. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here for a very important discussion about e-bikes with San Diego City Council member Raul Campillo. You know, a big part of this is educating people, the difference between e-bikes and e-motorcycles. With e-motorcycles, we've talked a little bit about this, but again, what have you learned? You know, they are very different and come with different rules. So we want people to know that.
Sure. Well, what I know is a lot of people think they're buying an e-bike, but they're buying an e-motorcycle, which is why I support Catherine Blakespeare's bill to get the consumer protections in place, the advertising done correctly. Look, an e-motorcycle goes much, much faster.
Yeah.
It has a completely different type of engine, and you have to wear the right helmet for that. So a bicycle helmet and a motorcycle helmet, very different. But there's already rules in place that have been enforced for riding motorcycles. They can be deceptive, though, because if you see a person riding a little bit slowly, you can't really tell if it's an e-motorcycle or an e-bike.
It's true.
What we have seen, though, and as was in the police officer's story of the traumatic injury, he helped that young boy, and when he found the young boy, the e-motorcycle is where we're seeing a lot of the farly more significant, because that extra few miles an hour is dangerous.
Yeah.
But e-bikes, you start with e-bikes recklessly, you go up to e-motorcycles recklessly. We just need to put in place a better culture around how to use these types of things, which can be useful tools, put a better culture in it, a more responsible culture with it.
And I do know there was actually a case also out of Orange County. A mom was actually charged with involuntary manslaughter and felony child endangerment because her 14-year-old son allegedly hit and killed a man while riding, again, an e-motorcycle. So state lawmakers, city leaders, everyone just trying to tighten these definitions, kind of crack down and ultimately save children from injuries and save lives, because it has and can happen.
No, yeah. Well, in the case that you're talking about, I think that was an 81-year-old substitute teacher who was a Vietnam veteran who got hit, and the 14-year-old boy drove away. It was a hit and run. That's like the far more criminal circumstance that we're talking about. Yeah. And obviously we want to prevent those. My focus right now is, how do we make everything around children getting to school, getting to the park, getting around the neighborhood safer? Yeah. You know, it was in my district where a young boy was hit by a car, and while he was crossing the street with his sisters, right? Yeah. And we've heard from that moment on, that was last October, the number of parents who came out and said, this is what's dangerous, this is what's dangerous, this is what's dangerous. And out of that discussion, we also heard, let's make e-bikes safer as well. And we can pass a law on that. The other things, spending money on safer roads, more stop signs, better crosswalks. That's the type of San Diego constituents in District 7 and all around the city really want, that I really want to present to people. And this is just one small way to actually move the needle towards protecting our young people, as well as a lot of our seniors who get grazed or hit by people on e-bikes. I mean, we can't ignore those circumstances and say, oh, that's just one bad actor. It's actually not just one bad actor. It's happening over and over and over again. And so let's just have a sense of responsibility around e-bikes, holding people accountable in some fashion, and that's the type of thing I'm fighting for.
And like you said, beautiful weather. We want people outside enjoying being on bikes, but just certainly doing so safely. So the floor is yours. Anything else? Are you proud of your city council members for passing this?
Well, I'm appreciative that it was unanimous. You know, I always love the fact that my staff worked really hard on this. My policy advisor, Carrie Shaw, she took this up, authored it with us, and got it through the whole city council. And so I know that it was a team effort, but it really started with the constituents. All our best ideas actually come from the community about what they're seeing and what they want for their children. And luckily, Tasha Berner gave us this tool through a state law to have this pilot program. And so ultimately, she deserves a lot of credit as well.
Well, I'm just glad to have this conversation with you. And again, education will come before any kind of fine. We want people to ultimately just be safe. So.
Yeah, no, and that's what the success looks like. You asked earlier, what does success look like? Less injuries. We don't want tickets out there. Hopefully we get 0 tickets. I want people to be safe.
As do I. So, we will have just a bit more to come in this conversation. Keep it here a little bit longer. Well, as we wrap up our conversation here with San Diego City Council member Raul Campillo, we are talking about e-bikes. Things have certainly changed. They've just grown in popularity very quickly. And so I just want to ask, like, what do you hope that now comes of this? What does the next 5 years look like for kids on e-bikes?
Well, I think after we have the educational program that we roll out and a lot more collaboration with schools, I got to be honest, the superintendent of San Diego Unified, Dr. Fabi Bagula, and trustee Shana Hazen, that oversees most of my area, my district, we've had conversations about safer routes to school and what the sort of infrastructure investments and improvements we need to have. And so this is not just City of San Diego. It's school district, it's county, it's state. And so there's a lot of leaders who want to protect our children, protect people walking down the sidewalk. So I hope your viewers come away from this understanding that we have a lot of people who want better. And that's because they're giving us these ideas. It's a top of mind issue.
Final thoughts for those opposed?
I have nothing to say because it passed unanimously.
Yeah, it did pass. Again, the San Diego City Council has approved new e-bike safety ordinance, bans children under 12 from riding Class 1 and Class 2 electronic bikes. I know it's important to you, all with good intentions to keep kids safe. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah,
we're going to.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's do a follow-up. And kids, you stay safe. Wear your helmets. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.